Good morning, everyone. My name is Corey Brumba, and I'm here today representing both Myron Construction as well as the New North, having been involved with the board for the past 15 years. Words cannot express our gratitude for what the Green Bay Packers bring to our region and our state. Being an integral part of the construction of Lambeau Field and Titletown has been very exciting for us. Perhaps you saw our cranes as you came in today on the players' new expansion on the east side of Lambeau Field. It's a genuine honor to have had a hand in the growth of this incredible expanding campus. All of us at Myron Construction are very proud to support the New North Summit. We are grateful for New North's dedication to the economic development and supporting business attraction and retention. That has afforded us the results to build countless dreams for our clients and enhance the vitality of our region. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Jill Enos, Managing Director of TitletownTech. Jill Enos is an experienced investor and operator in early stage ventures. Prior to TitletownTech, Jill worked with Fortune 50 innovation leaders at Stage 3 to create, build, and spin out new ventures and capabilities. She co-founded and led the New Venture Foundry, an early stage investment group providing seed capital and mentorship to regional startups. Jill also founded the Fox Connection, a collaboration of regional public and private universities to advance entrepreneurial opportunities and support for our area college students. Prior to returning to the Midwest from Washington, D.C., Jill was part of the leadership team at a venture-backed enterprise software services company that was acquired by AT&T. Earlier in her career, she worked for the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. Jill has a BA in political science from the Honors College at Michigan State University and an MBA from Harvard Business School. Please help me welcome Jill Enos to the stage along with four of the companies inside TitletownTech.
Well, I am delighted to be here. I know many of you may have seen in the initial program that Craig Dickman was going to join us today. And I'm no Craig Dickman, and I'll not try to be, but I'm delighted to be here and be a part of this. And first, I also want to say thank you to Mike Daniels, Nicolay Bank, Barb Lemieux, and the entire team at New North that puts this together. This is a Herculean effort to pull these things off, and it's greatly appreciated. So thank you all. You know, there's something really impactful about seeing you all here together and having you here together. It's the energy that's created when people are physically present and connected. It's a power of place. And at TitletownTech, we believe very strongly in the power of place. The idea of what we can do with place in this community, in this region, and truly in this state and broader Midwest is a lot of what we think about in the design and what we achieve and create next door in the building you may have seen with the big gold Titletown letters on top. TitletownTech is a venture capital fund and studio. We invest in startups across the U.S., early stage, high growth companies, the majority of which are here in the state of Wisconsin. And those that aren't here, that are based elsewhere, are tied to the industries and the strengths of this region. We're built on the foundation of this incredible partnership between the Packers and Microsoft. And in addition to the anchor partners, we are joined by many corporate investors who really create the fabric of what we call a connected capital model. This network of participants creates a mutually beneficial ecosystem, truly, to help startups find their way in the market and understand market needs, to attract and retain talent, to advance digital innovation, and ultimately to leverage the strengths of this region. These strengths, these are the key areas where we invest: sports, media and technology, digital health, manufacturing and construction technologies, supply chain and logistics, and what we call AWE, the nexus of agriculture, water, and the environment. We build and invest in early stage companies, and in the nearly 3 years that we've been operating, we've invested in 24 companies. But ultimately, it's not the companies that we think about as much as the founders and the people that we invest in. Those individuals, those teams that are determined, might I say obsessed, with addressing a unique need in the market. And what we wanted to do today is be able to share some of those stories with you directly from the founders. And I'm joined on the stage today by a couple of those founders. Third one's about to come on up. And I'm going to ask each of them, Abby, Alex, and Peter, to share a bit about the companies that they've created, about the journeys they've been on, and about some of the opportunities and challenges in this market. So I want to start with asking them to talk about and describe your companies. Describe what your company does and who you serve and what your market is about. And then we'll come back to and hear a little bit more about your personal stories. And I'll start with Abby.
Well, thank you all for inviting me here. Jill, TitletownTech. Abigail Barnes, co-founder and CEO of Amulet. We have developed the world's smallest and fastest electrochemical detection platform. We recently were Allergy Amulet. Some of you may have heard of that company. That's now one of our core brands. So we have two core brands, our consumer brand, Allergy Amulet, whose signature wearable is a necklace, wristband. We also have a keychain version. It's a device that allows you to detect allergens in your food at the table within about a minute. So if you have a peanut allergy, if you have a gluten intolerance, our product is designed to help you test your food. When you go out to dinner, after the waitress or waiter says your food is safe, gives you some information, cutting edge scientific data about the contents of your food. Amulet Scientific is our commercial platform. We have two products within that platform. One is a white label of this, which is called a potentiostat for all of you engineers and scientists out there. It's basically a device that allows you to detect a number of different contaminants, and we're looking to partner with food manufacturers. So work with them to detect toxins and also allergens as well. So that's Amulet in a nutshell. And excited to be here with you all and talk more about our company.
Alex, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name's Alex Tank. I'm the founder of Fork Farms. Again, thank you very much for having us. I want to just briefly thank Barb Lemieux. She was actually the person that introduced us to Jill, and so we would not be part of TitletownTech without the New North, so we're very grateful for this organization. Fork Farms is an agriculture technology company. We were founded right here in Appleton, Green Bay, New North area. The whole concept started out in Brooklyn, New York, but fundamentally we are working to increase access to fresh food for all people. We believe that fresh food's a human right, and we believe that right now there's an issue with that in a lot of different settings. And so anything that we can do to bridge that gap and to build engagement in fresh food and to build access to fresh food, particularly for kids, folks in poverty, all over the place. We just really are passionate about this space. We do that through a patented technology that we developed. It's been in development over the past 5-6 years. It's called the Flex Farm. It's about the size of a standard refrigerator, 9 square feet of space, but it grows over 25 pounds of food every 28 days. So our idea is the decentralization and the hyper-localization of the fresh food system. How can we get fresh food production right on site, especially with the people that really need that the most?
Thank you. And Peter.
Morning, everyone. So my name is Peter Romanesco. I'm the CEO for a company called Demiplane. And this is going to be very interesting because Abby's saving lives, Alex is keeping them healthy, and I'm about to ask you if anyone's watched the 4th season of the latest Stranger Things. So we've got at least 1, 2, okay, well at least 3, 4, okay. So my target audience just went up by 4. which is great. So Demiplane is playing a unique role in the tabletop role-playing game space. The best part about this event is that there's lots of tables. I wish I would have brought some dice for you all, and we could have told some awesome stories. You guys could have thought, well, here's what I'm doing for work, but what if I was a wizard? And those are the people that are using Demiplane today. What Demiplane found early on before COVID hit, ideation started in 2018. My partner and I founded it in 2019, and we started cutting code in 2020, was that for people who play these tabletop role-playing games, which has grown about 800% in the past 5 years as an industry sector, the people who run these games and tell the stories from their imagination, known as game masters, are really hard to find. And so we found that the average demand for a person who knew how to play these games, or at least could tell these really awesome stories, was about 12 to 1, and the average game size on Demiplane today is 3.83 players to every one game master. So we knew that there was a 3x kind of mismatch between supply and demand. So for me, I actually started my career after I graduated from St. Norbert College. What Green Knights. I started at Breakthrough Fuel, which was in the supply chain industry, so matching supply and demand was really something that I thought was very important and would use to find opportunities within markets, which is why we started here. Also, I'm a huge nerd and played these games for a long time. When COVID hit, we realized that matchmaking was going to be pretty hard because everyone was staying in their basements. We launched June 1st of 2020, so we really picked a great time to figure that out. And then what we found during that time was there were two other issues. One, this industry was rapidly moving digitally because people didn't want to give up their favorite games. But two, if any of you have played a tabletop role-playing game or have been to Gnome Games or a Barnes & Noble and seen a Lord of the Rings book, but you open it, it's a bunch of rules with pictures of dice. You're not really sure what that means. Those are the rules. That's the all game mechanics for tabletop role-playing games exist in physical books. And so these game publishers were immediately hit with a critical issue. How do we take these digital versions of our game and make them work for a game that's played really physically and played in person, and it's very cooperative? And so for us, what we did was we quickly moved. We kept our matchmaking portion and started filling that gap of connecting players, game masters, and now game publishers. And then we also started to work with the publishers themselves and help digitize their games. So we take books that are 600, 800, 300 pages, and we very rapidly digitize them, take all of the assets of those games, and we're creating the digital game engine for those games that previously just existed at a tabletop or on a bookshelf. But a book doesn't tell you, how many times you've opened the book, whether you like it, whether you're having fun, what types of wizard you're playing, what types of spells you're casting. Those are all things that never existed for this industry that's experienced really raw, rapid growth, and now with Demiplane, you're able to do that. Our partners are fantastic. We started with a game called Pathfinder, which is a high fantasy sword and board type thing. So if you ever watched Game of Thrones, I could talk to you about what that's like to be a real knight of the Watch, and maybe make you a character if you want after this. And then our most recent announcement had to do with Marvel Entertainment. So if you would rather see something like the Avengers and maybe you want to shoot laser beams out of your eyes, I could also help you make a character there and can hook you up there. So it's been a lot of fun. It's certainly different than these two. These guys have awesome businesses. And we're definitely falling in the sports and entertainment side with probably a little bit heavier focus in the entertainment. So it's good meeting everyone. Thanks for having us here.
Thank you. Peter started to share a little bit about the origin story, but I'd like to kind of go deeper with each of them. If you can really talk about your career to get to this point and what brought you into starting the company that you've started. And I'm sure we have many entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs in this audience that often want to know, how do you decide when? What pushes you over the edge? Share a little bit about where you started and where that's evolved to with your own career. Go ahead, Abby.
So, unsurprisingly, I have food allergies myself. I've been hospitalized 6 times and went into anaphylactic shock as a teenager and almost died after one bite of a nut cookie that I was told was safe. And when you have an experience like that, it really it leaves a mark, and it was really what motivated me to start this company, and it's why I'm sitting here today. But I was not so naive as to start a company without the science. I'm not a scientist. I'm actually a licensed attorney. I met serendipitously my co-founder, who is a world-renowned chemist, At the time, he was a Dartmouth professor when I was in law school. And he was, at the time, developing sensors related to our sensors. And fast forward, that company is the first company to commercialize these types of sensors. They're doing phenomenally well. They detect nicotine and marijuana in hotel properties, commercial real estate across the country. We're slated to be the second. And we actually have a different and novel method in our approach as well. So when I met him, he also has a food allergy. It seemed, right time to try and really take this idea and see what came of it. So I did ditch my career in law. I did have a very nice, cushy offer from a law firm that I turned down to pursue what is now Amulet. And it's been an incredible experience. I will say, for founders, you're going to get a lot of advice. There's a lot of advice to be shared. I would say, figure out as early as you can whether or not the idea has potential, and just try and get as many people to tell you that they would buy this thing. That's what I did. I talked to as many people as I could with food allergies. If this had existed, would you buy it? And enough people, hundreds of people later, yeah. And then we sold out of pre-orders last year in about 4 hours. We're shipping our first units this summer. And we have some, the reason we created Amulet Scientific was because of inbound interest from the industry. So we had so many people that said, wow, gosh, you would save us time, save us money. We could test on site at our food manufacturing facilities. Right now, oftentimes those facilities are sending out samples to a lab and waiting for those test results to come back. We're right there on site testing that grain supply for herbicides, for can't disclose what we're detecting quite yet, but that will come. And we also have a proprietary technology. We did get an issued patent, and it's been a great journey. So I would highly encourage all the entrepreneurs out there to pursue their passions. Make sure you're passionate about it, though. I will say that, because this is a it's a slog. I feel like I got suckered in a little bit to this, and then it was too late to get out. We have now we have 7 VCs, 1 high net worth individual, and about 50 angels. So I have some responsibilities now. There's no going back. Thank you. Yeah.
I think it's actually, a real fact, the challenge of being obsessed with something. And what we've seen time and again with founders, they tend to be the type of individuals that have an idea and they can't sleep at night without thinking about that idea and how to bring it to life. And it just kind of takes control. And I think, as much as Abby said she made a choice to jump into this, we see really often in the entrepreneurial space, they're so pulled by it, they just can't move away from the concept they're trying to pursue. And so I'll turn to Alex and have him share his story.
Yeah, that's definitely true with us. I'm leading an ag tech company of all things right now, but 10 years ago I was an opera singer. So for those of you that think, I have an idea that's outside of my field, but I can't do it, I think you can. So I'm not sure, I tried singing to the plants. I haven't figured out how to make that work yet. But so the story is I went to school for classical music and very passionate about that, love music. Ended up getting a residency in New York City to sing. And that's what brought me out there. And I had a buddy of mine, a Juilliard grad, who was singing at this fancy art gallery. And he invited me to come and do a couple duets with him. And I said, sure. There's free wine, so okay. And when I was there, I met this gentleman who was a sculptor, and he had built this incredible sculpture, and it had plants growing out of it. And I was just really interested in it and started talking to him. And he told me about how he was growing food on a rooftop. And I thought that was just the craziest thing I'd ever heard. You're actually farming in New York? A lot of you, I'm sure, have been to New York. Last thing you would think. And so I said, I have to see this thing. And he invited me to come, and I went. And it was just this beautiful oasis in the middle of the city. And I grew up in Appleton, and we're blessed with a lot of nature around here. And it was really something that brought me back home a little bit, I think. And so I asked him if I could volunteer for him. It was a volunteer farm. And all the food that he was growing, he was feeding himself and the volunteers, and then all the rest of it was being brought to this food pantry that was on the first floor of the building. And I also thought, what a really interesting ecosystem to see right in the middle of Brooklyn. And so I started growing food and hanging out outside with these interesting people. And at the end of the summer, I'd grown a bunch of stuff. And they said, any of this that you grew, you're welcome to bring home. And, you're a starving artist. We're really encouraging you to bring it home. And that's when it really happened for me, is as I started eating this food that I'd grown, and my eating habits changed like immediately. And it ended up really helping me through some depression, anxiety stuff I'd going on at the time. And I don't think we talk about that stuff enough, frankly. And I think food has power to really help people in that space. And it really did for me. And it was so transformational that I thought, like, man, if we could just help other people have that same experience, like, would they go through this too? And talked to some friends about it who were working at this farm with me, and we started a little group, got some United Way funding, and built some rooftop farms for New York public schools to try to do this for the kids. And it didn't work, because the kids aren't around during the summer. And they're not going to be able to grow the food. Like, the parents ended up doing all the work, and the teachers were felt saddled by this farm that we had spent $50,000 building for them. And so we're like, well, maybe we need to bring it inside so that they can grow during the winter when they're actually in school. And we tried that, but it didn't work, because all the technology that was available at the time, either you needed a PhD in horticulture to manage, or you had to be willing to spend $10, $12 a pound on the food itself. And none of the schools were willing to scale. They were like, this is interesting for an educational play, but we can't actually feed anybody doing it this way. And I was like, man, that is just a missed opportunity. It's not going to work. You can't really do what I wanted to do with what was available. And so I started tinkering in my apartment, and it took about 3 years and flooded a lot. But a lot of water on the floor. But around 2013 is when I stumbled into this really simple idea that when you put the right kind of light in the middle of these reflective surfaces, you recapture energy, and that drives the energy requirement to grow food indoors by less than half of what the industry standard really still is. And that brought the cost of growing the food to about $1 per pound. And now you're actually able to have farmers market quality, organic, beautiful produce at the same price that you're paying the iceberg, chopped romaine crap that's grown, way, way far away from here, right? And that I think is a game changer, because now you've got unit economics. And I think once we stumbled into that, I realized this is what I am going to do, and move back home, because I looked at rent in New York. It's impossible to start this kind of business in New York City. It never would have happened, because cost of living's way too high, talent is way too expensive. There's a million reasons why it just would have completely failed in the first month. And so moved back and felt completely insecure about starting my own business. I have no business background, and ended up meeting some folks at Goodwill who were executives at Goodwill Industries locally here, who had worked for Kimberly-Clark, Plexus, and a number of the amazing organizations that are in this room. And the whole theory that the CEO at the time had was, you've done well, now come and do good. And so I got to meet a lot of you really early after moving back, and I got to learn. And that group let me deploy the technology in the workforce development setting and in an educational setting and working for Goodwill. Helped actually get some field tests done using philanthropic dollars so we could actually do some good. Learned a lot, iterated a lot on the technology, continued that work at Feeding America, and it just grew to the point where I had to choose whether I was going to shut it down or quit the day job and pursue it.
What was your title at Goodwill?
I was the head of lettuce at Goodwill. Yeah. So I know I rambled a lot there, but I think, for anybody that's looking to pursue this, for me, it was an obsession with learning, I think, is what has made this succeed. It's the humility to know what you don't know.
Well, my first discussion with an opera singer was on stage at Lambeau Field talking about lettuce. So that was fascinating. That's all great stories. I was not expecting that. I didn't know you were an opera singer. That's awesome. What are we doing here? Why aren't you just doing this, right? So Demiplane and the idea behind Demiplane really goes way back to 111 Pearl Street in Sharon, Wisconsin, which is a small town of about 1,200 people right on the border between Wisconsin and Illinois. And there was these kids across the street that were my neighbors, and their parents made them play outside all the time. They never got to have a Super Nintendo. They never got to have a regular Nintendo. When the Nintendo 64 came out, there was no way they were going to play. So they would come over to my house, and then we would play and not tell their parents. But then when I'd be like, well, hey, why don't we ever go across the street to your house? We'd go and, no video games. You guys got to do something else, So we found these games that you could play that were technically games, but it looked like you were reading. And so it was like, oh yeah, you can play, you could play those games because it's fun and it's educational. And so that's where my co-founder Travis and I started, actually playing these tabletop role-playing games when we were really young. And fast forward a few years, I came up here, went to St. Norbert. Travis went to UW-Madison and started playing for the Badgers. Then he got a dual degree, computer science and computer engineering at Madison. I got a business degree from St. Norbert and started working at Breakthrough Fuel. He was like, he always tells people, oh, my friends all got cool jobs at Microsoft or Facebook, and I got drafted by the Cowboys. And it's he went number one, and they were not number one. He went in the first round. And went on to have a great career in the NFL. And it was, a couple years later, we were still playing these games to stay in touch because our friend group, we made a lot of great friends playing these games, and the industry was slowly starting to move digitally. And so, meanwhile, careers advance, time passes, and I'm using these tools, because we're using them every week, right? That's how we stay in touch with our friends. Just like, some kids today are playing, Fortnite, and they're talking, smack to their friends, or they're playing with a group of 4. And, it's that same concept. It's just for a different type of more collaborative gameplay. It's a way that, people use to stay in touch with other people across the world, or even right next door if they're not able to leave. And so, we were using these online tools, and I started to notice early when I was at TitletownTech, there was a lot of interest in esports. And I was a partner at TitletownTech before I started Demiplane, and so I was doing research into the esports industry, which was getting a lot of attention. And there was some business research that came out that said, actually, the propensity for people to spend money on and in games and forms of entertainment is when it's collaborative, and when you're doing it along with your friends. And I was like, well, that's really interesting because all these games are competitive, right? So a lot of the first-person shooters, a lot of the esports type games, those are all competitive games. It's head-to-head type games. And so what was being popularized and what was being shown a lot, and still today gets a lot of attention, are these games where it's very competitive and can be argued that it's a sport. But where the business starts to get interesting is when it's collaborative, because people feel like they're advancing a story or advancing something that they can invest in, and they get to see an end outcome, which is really valuable, and do that with their friends. And so I said, okay, well, this is a pretty interesting business, but at the end of the day, this is just a game. Like, we're just playing these. We're just nerds. We're like quiet nerds. I was at Breakthrough. I'd been to every continent except for Antarctica. Was working there, but everybody knew I was a nerd there too, to be fair. But it wasn't a thing. Like, we weren't going to make the games and our hobbies our business. So Travis and I kept playing these games, and all of a sudden I realized, there's a lot of talk about this on social media, but there's not a lot of talk about this in the actual, the proper media, the actual game coverage, the games industry. When you looked at the stock prices for big companies like Hasbro, the stock prices weren't reflecting the results that they were seeing from the games in this industry. I was like, why is nobody talking about this? That's when I started to see the growth of people talking about it in other ways. They started having Reddit posts. I noticed that the amount of posts about Dungeons & Dragons was about 2 times the number of posts people were talking about Call of Duty on Reddit. And when I started seeing that, I was like, okay, there's some real social trends that are happening here. And the tools and the support online were just simply not at a level that I was seeing kind of match. Okay, the tools and support is very lacking, but the amount of interest that's coming up and bubbling up is actually quite high. And so, for me, it was this classic risk tolerance, really. And so I would ask you all to think about kind of where I was at the time, to think about this same question about when would you jump in. So in 2012, the number of people playing these games online, as I was doing the research, was about 1,200 people. The next year, it jumped to about 12,000 people. The year after that was probably about 30,000 people. It then moved to 100,000 people, right? And so you start seeing these trends. When do you jump in? When do you start your company? Last year, actually the past 3 years, that number has continued to double. So it went from about 1 million to 2 million, 2 million to 4 million, and as far as I know, last year was 4 million to 8 million, and we're seeing these continue to run. So for me, it becomes a total market size. We think the total number of players in the industry right now is about 60 million players, but the digital tool sets are still queued for that kind of 100,000 people playing online mark. And so for me, the question is, when did I want to jump in? When did we decide that the market was big enough for us? What did we think we could do to build a sustainable business model to keep our business growing? Those were all the questions that we were asking ourselves early on. And when we finally thought it was ready and we saw enough movement in the market and said, hey, 4 million people are playing this, and last year there were 2, and when we started talking about this, there were 1, I think if we get in now, it's going to be the right spot. So that was what the decision was for us. It was very data-driven. It was very data-driven because we knew we were passionate about it. We knew we had the skills between Travis and I to do this. And so when the time came, we started asking people if they would be interested, just like Abby said, asking if people would buy this. We asked do you think this is cool? Like, do you think that people would use this stuff? And so we started asking around, and one of the main people in the industry said, not only is this cool, like, we want to invest in you, would you take investment? And that's when we knew, hey, $500,000 investment, we didn't even ask for it, we need to take this seriously. And so that's when we decided to do so. So for me, the thing I would always ask others is, like, when would you jump in on your industry? If your total market size is 100 million and you have an idea that you think is neat, would you jump in when it's 40,000 to 80,000, 80,000 to 160, 160 to a million? What is it that's interesting you? Is it the multiplier? Is it the absolute number? Is it, when it's 50%, then I'll invest in it? Is it that that you have the capability that you can then turn around and say, I can make this go from a stagnant 2 million up into 40 million because we have a capability or a skill set that allows us to do that? Those are the types of things that I would encourage any entrepreneur to really think critically about, because at the end of the day, by the time you normally would think it's time to get in, it's too late, and now you're in a very crowded space. So it really is, the risk tolerance side comes down to, when do you think it's time for you to jump in, knowing it might take 12 to 18 months to get something really up and running. And then also, every once in a while, a pandemic happens. So, you got that going for us. But that ended up being really good for us from a strategy and from a development standpoint, because we saw really quickly that we needed to support the industry in a way that was different than what we originally thought, but we had the capability to do it. So we decided to.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask a couple more questions. I'm trying to figure out how we are on time, Barb. I know we're at, all right. One of the things that, as people see you up here, you're obviously successful. You're here, you've been working on this company, this idea, but there have been certainly challenges you've had to deal with, some things that completely did not work, that you had a great expectation of. Can you pick something to share with the group that was, one of the hard things, one of the things that failed or didn't work, and how you learned from it? And I'll start with Alex on that.
Okay.
Just to let Abby off the hook.
Because she knows I have a couple of
Yeah, you were telling us about how everything wasn't working. Why don't you tell it again?
Right. Yeah, I can think of a lot of things. Well, we launched the company with a product that didn't work. So there's that. That's not advisable. That's not the way to do it. But yeah, we launched and we learned. I mean, it did what we said it did, but it didn't work in that it wasn't a real fit for the customer. We hadn't really found that core product market fit. And so, we had to learn and adjust, like Peter was talking about, really fast. And we went slow in the beginning. And I think for us, the drumbeat of the business has always been cash. Cash is king, right? Because if you run out, it's all over. So we've been very diligent around, trying to figure out how to manage that incrementally as we've grown. And I think in the first year, it went slower by design, so that we could really get it right before we started to scale at all. But it was just going to the sites and talking to the customers and really getting real with them and letting them beat you up and taking that lick and doing something about it. That that was those years. Then a couple years later, we raised some money to do a really large commercial installation. So we had gotten interest for the first time in the technology at a much larger scale. At the time, we had been placing these flex farms, maybe 1 to 8 of them on a location, and this was the equivalent of doing, a couple hundred, right? And so we decided to pursue it, but needed to redesign the technology to go after that. And it really shifted the core focus of the business for a period of time. And looking back, that was a mistake because we had learned how to do something really well, and we had learned how to replicate that really efficiently, and we were scaling that side of the business fast. And to go after this shiny object over here, it on paper, it looked like an amazing opportunity. It looked like a really big growth opportunity for us, but it fundamentally distracted us and slowed us down. And ultimately, for that period of time, made us less capital efficient. And so I think that was a great learning lesson as well, to really focus and to really stay focused. And as we're expanding and growing, to really be cognizant of the impact that that's going to have on the core business.
Thank you. Thank you. And Peter, a problem or a challenge, something that went wrong?
Sure, yeah. It's funny, Jill said that we're all successful. I feel the one thing I've succeeded in the most is driving my wife absolutely crazy and testing her patience. I think so for me, the number one thing here is like, how do you define success? And for us, just like Alex said, managing your resources and time is so critical. And so that's often where for me, we're at the early stages, you just think about things really differently. And there was a great opportunity, actually, TitletownTech provided the opportunity for us yesterday to listen to someone that was coming in from Netflix, talk about how they, get started in certain areas. And it was so fascinating because success to them is operating within an ecosystem that has existed for, a dozen years or so. And for us, success is defining what that ecosystem is and then realizing it's not working and then totally trashing it and starting it all over again. And it's just fascinating because there's totally different types of definitions of success. And so it's just a really interesting mindset to be in. When it comes to some of the things that we learned realized we did something so right that it actually ended up being wrong, was, as I mentioned early on, that we were a matchmaking service. So, we had this great marketing campaign about how you can find other people to play games with and all these things. And so we go to, we got everything in, we invested in it, it was really exciting. And we go to all the ads, like the online ad platforms to start advertising this, and we got denied unilaterally across the board because the standards for dating services are far higher than a standard ad. And let me tell you something. We are not a dating service, but anytime you use the word matchmaking, that's something that you start dealing with human trafficking and concerns about what kind of matches are you having and meeting in person. And so all of a sudden, this whole concept of like, oh yeah, that's the term that we were using. We had no concept of thinking about this more broadly and how this might impact people who were not familiar with the space. And so that was something for me that was like, okay, we need to pull back and really think about this messaging. Not just how we're going to tweak the body copy in the ad, but like the messaging itself. Who are we really targeting, and is this tight enough, or do we need to make this more broadly and think broader? So that was one that for me was really interesting early on. That was a true miss on my part. And then the second one was we launched in June, as I mentioned, when the June after COVID started really ramping up here. And there turned out to be a lot of people who still wanted to play these games, and they wanted to find matches, and they wanted to go out and create new groups because their in-person groups weren't playing anymore. And so in a single day, we matched 828 groups of 4 to 5 players, with a game master, and that was awesome. And then the next day, they were gone, and it was like everybody on Tinder got married in a day. And it's like, oh. So yeah, that's an issue, right? And so all of a sudden, the second day they didn't come back. The third day they were like, "Hey, this group is great. Thank you so much for connecting me with them." And I was like, through gritted teeth, "You are so welcome. Please come back," right? And so one of my favorite memories is a year and a half later. We have somebody come back and join one of our social media platforms, and they say, "Hey, my group just ended. I matched with you guys in June. Wow. You're doing a lot of stuff now. Where have you been for the past 18 months? We needed that user count." And so we saw really early, this platform was great. The algorithm was fantastic. The matchmaking was exactly what the market meant, and it was not sticky. It was not sticky. We were not going to be able to keep people in a virtual way, which was the new norm. We believed it was going to be the new norm and ended up being the new norm, or is becoming the new norm. And so right away, literally in July 5th, Travis and I got back together and we were like, we've been doing this for about 30 days. We need to think about how to make this sticky in a big way. And so that's where we really started to pivot and make moves in the company. So that was literally, we were live for 34 days and we shifted the entire strategy of the business. It's really paid off for us. I think it's been working really well. But boy, that was a really stressful time where for us to go in and basically append to the vision, because the matchmaking and the connecting of supply and demand was still really key and is still really key, but that's not the business. That all of a sudden became a single ingredient that was core to a meal that needed to be a bit broader. And that was something we learned really fast. And we wouldn't have done so without visibility to data, which is what we invested in early also.
And I might add that what we see on a regular basis, that why I personally and the team that I work with have such a passion for working with entrepreneurs, is the ability at this size and this stage to be that agile, to be able to be in market and hit an absolute wall and rapidly adjust, change, do something different to accommodate. And I'll turn it to Abby to hear a bit about what she's come up against.
Well, I was just thinking about, there have been a number of, sort of these, you face challenges all the time, right? And I think that as a founder, what you have to do is assess risk and base decisions off of the best available information at the time and just try and mitigate for that risk and optimize for outcomes. I mean, I think we haven't had, fortunately, any, big failures so far for the company, knock on wood. I don't think that, but there's been some baby things. I mean, the most recently, too, was I think we picked the wrong vendor for packaging, right? And this came from a recommendation from, you couldn't get a better recommendation for a firm to work with on designing the packaging. And they didn't disclose to us that they can do the design. Package looked beautiful. But then they said, yeah, and we'll get some vendors for you, we'll get some quotes and so forth. And fast forward. So they'd never worked with this group. It came from a recommendation. And so anyway, long story short, it delayed packaging and we had to switch vendors. And, when you're a startup, you can't afford, right, even these little baby, so 2-3 month delays, can really take a hit. If money wasn't an issue, you could afford to make tons of errors, right? You could try on 3 packaging vendors, see which one you like best, try on 3 design firms, But you have to stay lean, and so every decision really kind of has to be the right one, and that is a lot of pressure. It's also why, probably a lot of startups fail. They made a decision, best available information. Markets change too. These decisions can also be outside of their control. COVID hits, companies go under. So, you just have to, when we were picking our CM for manufacturing, gosh, we interviewed like 20 CMs. We tried to talk to as many CMs as possible and figure out which ones worked for us, because some were out of budget, some we just couldn't. Some were like, okay, that's nice to have, we'd love to work with you down the road, but we can't afford you. So we're going to have to settle for the best one, the most competent one that we think can deliver with a product like ours. Quality has to be there, but you just have to sort of navigate all of these decisions. And but yeah, we definitely have had challenges and over the years, and certainly decisions in hindsight we would have made differently. But that's all I got.
So, Joe, I might add, one of the things that was really interesting, I did a little bit of corporate innovation work before, and so it's been fascinating being on the startup side. But one of the things that's really interesting, it triggered a thought when Abby was talking about it, is, when you're a smaller company, you're going to be winning because you're more nimble, because the larger companies that you're competing with or are in the space, they can spend their way through failure, so they'll just keep spending because there's some other part of their business that will keep them afloat. And that's when you're a small company, you have to realize that you can't compete like that. You can't compete in that same way because you just don't have the resources. And if you can, then you probably don't own much of your business anymore. And so you're probably not making the decisions. So, what I think is really interesting about that is if you flip it on its head and you think about the industry here as we think about bringing, entrepreneurial spirit, here, or at least thinking about, there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit here, but really thinking about, these kind of startup companies or companies that are starting out, right, is all of us have pivoted because we failed. And if you start a new idea in a company that's existed and you don't let them fail or you keep funding that, with internal budget, or maybe you say, oh, we're going to cover this, until here. I would still be building solely a matchmaking platform because I think that's really important, and it is really important, but the business model needs more, right? And so if for us, we knew that there was nothing else on the backside, and so we needed to be able to pivot to keep the business, going. And like Alex said, cash is king. Well, if you have a budget that kind of can cover that because you can shift money from this bucket over into this new bucket that you're, it's like the seed idea that you're growing in your own company. In some ways, that kind of masks it. And what that really leaves is a zombie company in your company that everyone is saying is going to fail, but it's really not still going because you're still funding it, but it's not really seeing the results. And you almost have to, people aren't going to shift if you have the right people in the right spot. They're not going to shift if they don't see that there's danger, and then you have to make sure that person can see it appropriately so they can make adjustments. So it's really interesting to think about. I firmly believe that great new companies, these great startups that that are popping up, they can also come from companies that have established themselves over the past 50 years, 100 years, 150 years. It's just about, are you willing to let them fail, and how many times, what does failure mean, and how do you define that, and are you willing to take an idea that's not working and kill it and be okay with that group and start something new? That's something that is really, really hard to do. It's probably the hardest part about our job on a day-to-day basis, but sometimes if you have the resources, you actually end up responding to the market slower, and it might be our sin by moving too fast and make a decision too quickly. I spent 30 days and changed the whole business. Maybe I should have waited 60. But at the same time, if you wait 180, you may miss something depending on where you are. So just a thought, that I thought was really interesting about working with these kind of different sized players. And I really do think innovation can happen at any level. It's not just in a startup. It can happen at far larger companies.
I was just going to add, too, that the vendor that we ended up picking that saved the day, who I could not be more happy with, they're based in Green Bay. So and they source all the packaging locally. So we are actually doing all of our packaging here in Green Bay. And one other thing, too, I'll add. So, the difference, too, between a product like Alex's and ours is we can't afford to just get out an MVP that, might fail, or that might not work. We have had to do extensive testing. We have a lab in Boston. We've had between 3 and 5 full-time PhDs in that lab for the past 5 years. We have been relentless about making sure that this product that we are putting out is a product that I will stand by, that our team will stand by, and so and we're shipping this summer, so it's real. It's exciting to see all this come to fruition, but we can't get a product out there that lettuce can die. People can't.
I know we're coming up on time. I'll just end with asking Alex to talk a little bit about the supplier relationships he's had. I know Abby mentioned a Green Bay partner here. It's really fundamental to what we're doing. When I say talk about place and what we can do in place, even though we've got startups based in other places, we really draw upon expertise and strengths here, and that's what contributes to the success of so much of what we're investing in. And as Abby mentioned, having a supplier that saved the day actually here, and I know Peter's worked with partners and his co-founder being here with him, and Alex has been working also with the supplier in the state. And then from there, I think we'll just wrap. If everybody, after Alex's comment, could just give a final statement, what you want to share about building a company in Wisconsin. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, thanks. So for us, this was more of a philosophical decision. We thought local food, engagement in local food, we need to support local economy too, local manufacturing. And people thought we were crazy because we priced it out in China. We could get it done a third the cost at face value. But there's a lot of other values that go along into the supply chain that we have in this state. And I would argue that it's significantly more valuable than the other direction. And now I think we look like geniuses because we can get product and all the competition can't. And so we're just eating up market share right now, and it's going really great. So that's been really fun. But I will say that, I didn't know how to make things, right? And I built this thing out of wooden garbage bags, and it was growing lettuce efficiently, and I needed to figure out how to get it manufacturable. And so I actually got introduced to Kim Bassett from Bassett Mechanical when I was at Goodwill, and she took basically the design and the patent that we had, and I worked with her team to get it done in stainless steel. And she donated that first system to the Goodwill Community Center, so a couple kids that had pretty severe autism could run these systems and grow this food, and it was this very beautiful program that went on for a long time. Through that process, learned a lot, but realized that stainless steel is expensive, and if you're going to scale this thing, you have to get the cost way down. And so I just started taking this design that I had for how we might be able to do it in plastics around to different, just random manufacturers that I found on Google, right? I just found all y'all online. I didn't know how else to do it. And so, I think I ended up getting lucky, and I think part of, to Abby's point, the challenge is you kind of have to learn, through that whole process. Cost is a factor. The manufacturing process that you choose relates to cost. There's all this complexity in building the product and trying to get it out with the cash that we had to do what it needed to do, but also with the iterability that we needed to really get it ultimately where it needed to be. And that was something that we absolutely faced too. And I think that we are so rich. The manufacturing ability that we have in the state, I think, is probably the number one thing that we've been able to leverage. It's been absolutely incredible from quality and consistency and just having the relationship. But I will say that in the early days it was hard, and I frankly don't know how much it's improved. I'm sure it has. But to create a channel for entrepreneurs to be able to really access manufacturers that are willing to take a risk and willing to try something at a small scale and see if it scales, I think would be a doorway that we really could have used early on, and I think maybe would have propelled us a little further, a little faster.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, so all of our stuff is digital, so our creations are zeros and ones as opposed to atoms. So for us, the tech talent is really key. I didn't mention this, and I should have. Over half our team is here. The majority of those people are in the Fox Valley. We have a few other, here in Wisconsin, excuse me. And we have a few other folks down south and one out west. So, but the majority of the talent is right here. So if I've taken them from any of your companies, I don't apologize, but thank you. The main thing, for me that I think is really important and what we've learned about really growing this company in Wisconsin is everyone that comes here is like, wow, I can't believe you guys are doing this in Wisconsin. Why not? Why not, right? You can work on cool tech literally anywhere. It's like a core fundamental issue right now with all the largest tech companies is why are we paying people to have a standard of living in San Francisco when now they live in Montana on a ranch? That doesn't make any sense. I should pay them less. Well, no, you shouldn't pay me less. It's based on my talent, not my standard of living. You could literally work on this tech anywhere. And so for me, the things that I've learned is that, we are really competitive. We've only had one person ever say no to work for us. And it was because they were going to have a child in 4 weeks, and I totally think they made the right choice. The reality is everybody else has said yes, because we work on really cool tech, we're working on a fun problem. It's something where for us, we know that, we can go out there and we can pay them, they can live, they can work, they can have a great time, and they really want to solve awesome challenges. That's, I think, something that's really key. I think the two things that I've learned as a business owner that I was not expecting but found out really quickly is the first thing is in Wisconsin, I think we should have some discussions about the power of equity as we think about compensation. I think that equity as a form of compensation is so difficult to explain to the average person here because I don't think it's a common way of rewarding performance. And when I say common, I don't necessarily mean that everyone in the world should get equity for doing a job that might not need that. But I do think that there's just this multiplicative value that from a community standpoint, when it hits, it is so massive as a form of investment. Like, I think it's actually one of the best forms of investment when you can start something new, have equity exchange across a small community that's building something new, have it hit, and then be able to reinvest in that community. I think that is a form of setting roots that is wildly underutilized, and something when you look at other communities that have seen a great deal of success over the past 20, 30, 40 years, I think that's one of the key areas of really compensation that fundamentally shifts a region. So that's one thing that I would learn, had learned. The second thing is, wow, insurance. Like, what is going on there? The ability for a small company to offer insurance to, just have basic health, like, covered, is just wild. I mean, for everyone out there that has like hundreds of employees, God bless you. It's so wild. It's such a risk. People feel so tied to work because there's just basic health and fundamental health services. And when you're a new company, you're not asking. People aren't worried about leaving a job because their salary is gonna change. They're worried because they're not going to have health care. That's why people aren't taking risks. And it's not even a risk like, oh, I want my people to stay working for my company, absolutely. But like, as a community, people aren't taking risks because they don't think they're going to be able to get health care. And then, like I said before, throw a pandemic on top of that. You are going to have stagnant talent unless this gets figured out. So for us, what we do is we offer 100% of our insurance costs are covered by Demiplane, because that's what we had to do in order to get people in. And then what we do is we say, here is the total compensation package, here's what the salary that you asked for was, here's the insurance costs, and then we're gonna go down. And like I said, every person has said yes except for one. So when you go in and you look at your tech team and you say, oh, these tech people are really expensive, guess what? They just don't wanna have to worry that if they go to the hospital, they're not gonna be able to cover it. Like that is so key. And so I think for me, if there was two things that as a community we could work on, it's one is talking about the value of equity as a form of compensation for key talent as a way to keep them here, because I think that's really important. And then the second one is insurance costs, in my opinion, is really stagnating growth and innovation across the nation. But I know that here we have a great deal of focus on healthcare and insurance.
Thank you. And just one last comment from Abby. I know we're right up against the clock.
Just to build on that, I think if you as a founder, you need talent and you need money, right? So, if you want to attract good, founders to your state, I'm looking at, am I going to be able to attract good talent? And obviously that's changed with COVID a little bit. We were doing virtual before it was trendy, but I think Wisconsin, I will say, I think I've seen a lot of progress on this front in particular in the past few years, but funding for female founders in Wisconsin has ranked very low. I think the Crunchbase just came out with an article last week. We were ranked at the bottom with Utah for funding female founders. I think yet healthcare, access to, healthcare, just basic rights for women. I think there's a lot that we could move forward on, and which would attract and keep founders like me here. I'm from New York originally. I've lived in San Francisco. I've lived in Boston. Madison is the longest place I've lived, and the great quality of life for the cost of living. It's kept our burn down. Wisconsin has so much to offer, and there's so many opportunities here. I think, creating more attractive climate for female founders is definitely one thing. We also have a few of the richest women in the state, several billionaires actually. So I'd love to see more women at board tables, more women paying it forward, more women angel investors. I think that's really also the way to move the needle forward, is getting more women in positions of power. And I think that's how you're going to get more founders here, and create more jobs, and create a more robust economy, both not just in the cities, but in outlying regions as well.
Thank you. And I have to say that TitletownTech, while the state may lag, TitletownTech has been well ahead in who we're funding. We're funding plenty of female founders as well, including Abby, and we'll continue to do that. And I just want to say thank you to these founders and the many founders that we work with, and thank all of you for kind of hearing and sharing their story. And they'll be around for some time at the networking break as well. I want to move on before we leave the stage and introduce our next speaker. Shalene Duvgan is the Executive Vice President, Chief Innovation and Technology Officer at Schneider, a premier provider of multimodal transportation services. He leads the company's innovation portfolio, technology, logistics, engineering, and revenue management initiatives as a member of their executive team. He also leads Packerland Ventures, Schneider's corporate venturing arm, established to bring industry-changing freight tech capabilities to the mainstream. He focuses on emerging technology and thesis-driven investing, with targets that include autonomous vehicles, transportation platforms, IoT applications, cognitive decision science, and sustainability. Shalene also serves as an advisor to the logistics portfolio of 8VC, a Silicon Valley-based venture capital fund, as well as an advisor to TitletownTech, our local venture capital. Prior to joining Schneider, Shalene spent over a decade as an industry consultant specializing in corporate venturing, formulation, and execution of business and technology strategy. Please help me welcome Shalene to the stage, and thank you all founders for being up here with us today.
Thank you for those kind words, Jill, and good morning. My name is Shalene Duvgan. I have the ultimate privilege of leading technology and innovation at Schneider. Hopefully many of you know us. We're a 85-year-old startup based right here in Green Bay. And I don't say that in jest, and I'll talk about why I think that is. Schneider is a quintessential American success story. A man with a dream, the ability to reimagine, sells his family car to buy that first truck, and that first truck today is Schneider National, and we almost $6 billion trucking and logistics company that serves almost each company within the Fortune 500. Before I start talking about what we're doing within the tech space and otherwise, just to contextualize who Schneider is and to give you an appreciation of the scope of our scale and operations. All of you know, most of you know Schneider, but we've rapidly grown. We're about 16,000 associates. We've got over 100,000 move-in assets. So we've got about 12,000 tractors, 55,000 trailers, 30,000 containers. As we move a lot of loads, so as a company, we travel 10 million miles every single day. So that's over 300 trips across the globe. And think about it, it's about 20 trips to the moon and back every single day. So we move a lot of freight, but we're also moving a lot of data. So each of these moving assets are basically technology assets that are sending us data as zeros and ones, and we're basically running one of the largest over-the-road networks in the country, learning from our assets, predicting where to put our assets. We're running a dynamic network, taking account weather patterns, where demand is going to be, how do you position your assets in case of a disaster, where you move them. So all of that happens through technology. At Schneider, so Schneider has a brand that's synonymous with technology. It's not because of something that we're doing today or something that we did yesterday or the day before. It's something that is ingrained in the company by its founders. It's in our DNA. We're a pragmatic innovator, and we've done it for the last 50 years. So we were one of the first companies in transportation to create a control system which is manage visibility to our assets, and we did that in the 1970s. We were, there's this whole new brand or technology that you hear about called telematics that's creating billions of dollars of investments today. In 1989, Don Schneider invested in an entrepreneur based out of San Diego who had a solution to create two-way satellite-based communication with a truck. That founder was Irvin Jacobs, and he used the investment and his first customer in that business called QES to create what is now Qualcomm. A lot of folks don't know that. So we've got a history of supporting and working with inventors, We've continued to do so, and we intend to do so in the future as well. So I know there's plenty of entrepreneurs in this room, so we do look to each one of you to create solutions that we can wow our shippers and our customers with. As I've said, that the rate and pace of innovation has not slowed down at Schneider. I called ourselves a startup because as proud as we are of our history, penned right here in Green Bay, Wisconsin, we're absolutely perpetually dissatisfied with where we are, and we're looking to the next challenge. We're always willing to disrupt ourselves, and we continue to do that over the last 50 plus years to create what's next for the industry. We do believe that we have the right to create the next generation transportation marketplace, and we've got an ambitious goal. We want to define the future of goods mobility, in this world. And that's how the movement of things in the future, and we're aggressively working towards that. So over the last 3 years, like every other industry, we've seen a huge, the rate and pace of change, thanks to technology, has been a hockey stick in our industry as well, in our business as well. We're seeing rapid use of data. We're seeing, breaking down of business models, new business models emerging. And we've been headfirst in sort of exploring and driving some of those new technologies and innovations into our business. So as I said, we work in we're a large transportation provider, but it's a very, the industry doesn't have, it's fragmented. The top 5 players own less than 10% of the market share. So our goal is to be the ability to aggregate demand on one side of the equation, aggregate supply on the other side. So we've got 12,000 tractors. How do we go to market as having 120,000 tractors? So we do that by aggregating third-party demand capacity in the industry, and we're doing that through technology. So the ability to aggregate demand on one side, capacity on the other side, is what we're doing. And then the goal is through algorithmic systems, try to play Cupid to get that demand and capacity to meet. We're sort of a giant eHarmony for trucking, is what we're doing in our business every single day. And we're doing that through this platform that is algorithmic. I always talk about us. We're a transportation company on our billboard, but really we're a decision science company that's using massive amounts of data, about 5 terabytes of data that we're deriving from our assets to make load acceptance decisions, to make safety decisions with our assets. And we're doing this 24/7 every single day. So how do we believe that we're going to go create the future marketplace of transportation? We strongly believe that is going to happen through a collaboration ecosystem of ecosystems. And we're helping build that in the nation, but more importantly, we're helping build that ecosystem here in the region. So as you see, we've got numerous partnerships and investments we've made. I'll call out a couple of these. Platform Science is a Silicon Valley company that is almost valued at $1 billion. SoftBank just came in with their latest round, valuing the company very close to $1 billion. And that company is based on IP that was created right here in Green Bay. We were their first customer. We actually built the product and then took an equity position in the company for the IP that we granted Platform Science. Platform Science, for those, do look at them. They are now fast becoming the de facto standard of communication in next generation trucks across multiple vendors, whether that's a Daimler or Navistar. Their technology is now embedded in vehicles as they roll off the lots, including the EV platforms that are now being developed. So really successful. Mastery is the other one that I'd call out. It's a new generation transportation management system. We were the first investors. We're helping them build a product. And within 3 years, they've gone from us being their first product to probably having 15 of the largest transportation companies on their roster with a valuation of over $1 billion. So again, when we invest in companies, we're all in. We're not just investors, we're promoters. And we're really driving these companies to success, because if these companies succeed, it helps us transform our business. Some of the other names, Too Simple is the autonomous trucking company that we're early investors in. we've ChemDirect, who I think Tyler couldn't be here this morning, but I know that he is out closing a very big deal with a large chemical manufacturer, and as his board member, I'm happy he's doing that. He's prioritizing his day. So good luck to him. I think they're going to revolutionize how people sell and buy chemicals. They're born right here. They're a TitletownTech company, but we're also investors in them separately. So we've got some great hopes, and I think they'll be one of these companies that we'll be talking about for a long time. Jill's been up here. I think Jill and Craig have done a phenomenal job getting entrepreneurs to the area, and we're thrilled to work with them to actually support these these entrepreneurs as they create these bright ideas and sort of build the next billion-dollar idea to come out of Green Bay here. So we're happy to support that. We've Dynamo Generator. We've done some work nationally with Silicon Valley. We do a lot of work with Silicon Valley. I spend a lot of time getting ideas, but having been on the West Coast and then coming back to Green Bay, there's nothing that we're missing. I think we're prepped to compete with the best of the very best, given the talent that sits in this room and in this area. And I'm super excited for what the future holds and what we're going to be able to do together. So very excited to be here today, Barb, and thank you for inviting us. Truly appreciate it. So again, as we partner with entrepreneurs, our industry is collapsing around automation. So if you don't have a product and you don't have a company that's in the transportation space, that's not what we're looking on. We're looking for anything that can automate processes, get the human to do the higher value thing and automate the commodity tasks. We want to talk to you. We're looking at intelligence, which is machine-based learning, neural networks. We're piloting a lot of that. In fact, we're probably the only freight company that actively has a very advanced decision science program. I put our program against the best of the very best, and I'm just talking about transportation. We're talking about leaders in the decision science space in Silicon Valley. We are doing work that is beyond cutting edge, and we're happy to do that here in Green Bay. I talked about this marketplace, about aggregating demand on one side, capacity on the other, and playing Cupid. That happens through very advanced mathematical algorithm-based platforms that we've been developing, and we're looking for those folks that can come along with us and help accelerate that journey to create that future marketplace, and the future marketplace of mobility. So we're looking forward to be able to talk to some of you that can help us do that. Last but not the least, we're running when you're running 10 million miles a day. Today we're producing significant amount of carbon. We are committed to having the largest EV fleet by the end of next year, Class 8 fleet in the country by next year, and we'll get there before anybody else does. So we're actively moving towards that, but we also have numerous decarbonization technologies that are based on decision science to lower carbon footprints that we're beginning to offer our shippers, and they're super excited. So we anticipate that as we sort of continue this journey, there's going to be a lot of work that we're going to do in the sustainability space as that transitions from molecules to electrons starts to happen. Last but not the least, in the AV piece you saw, we invested $25 million to build our innovation center called The Grove. And The Grove, to me, is our belief in the power of what Northeast Wisconsin can do, and the IP and the great companies that can produce. So The Grove is sort of that shiny city on the hill. It's a building, but it's more than a building. It's taking what we've done for the 50 years and creating an environment where entrepreneurs can partner with us, are given the tools, latest technologies to work and create solutions that radically change and create that future mobility center of excellence. So we want to do that here in Green Bay. I sincerely believe there's no reason why Green Bay can't be the center of goods mobility for the future, why we can't drive that and become the capital for future movement of goods and the goods mobility revolution right here in Green Bay. So I look forward to meeting many of you in our humble hope of being able to do that, and again, look forward to many discussions this afternoon. Thank you for the time. I know I stand between you and break, but before I go, I have the pleasure of introducing Anne France. Anne is the Executive Director of the Northeast Wisconsin Manufacturing Alliance. She has led the organization since its inception in 2006. The Alliance is up to 300 members, and employs more than 52% of the manufacturing workforce in the area. I know that we're not in manufacturing, but we're looking forward to being, we're already a member and looking forward to getting some great partnership going. But again, it's a hypothesis around successful private-public partnerships, and we're looking forward to engaging with them and being a partner. So welcome, and thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it.
Good morning. What a great, great morning. Wow. I want to just thank New North for your partnership over the years. It's been amazing. Thank you. I want to invite you to our breakout session this afternoon. We're going to be up on the 4th floor of the atrium. And it's our quarterly membership meeting, but you don't have to be a member in order to come. We're going to be talking a little bit about the organization, but then we're going to be having a presentation by Prevea. They'll be speaking on mental health first aid in the workplace. And don't we all need that? And then our keynote is Chad Kapitsky with Next Gen Advantage. And he will be speaking about talent and the new world of work. So I hope you'll join us. I'd love to see you. And I'm excited about the rest of the program today. So it's time for a break. And what's great is that you're going to be able to network now, as well as after our breakout session, we'll be having the full networking at the 4th floor. So time for a break. Thank you.
I'm Dan Heiser, Dean of the Schneider School of Business and Economics at St. Norbert College. St. Norbert is the only Norbertine college in the world and was founded in 1898, which means we will soon be celebrating 125 years of service to Northeast Wisconsin. We are a small liberal arts institution focusing on delivering high engagement instruction. In the current environment, a lot of college-age students are feeling disconnected, and we strive to support the whole person as they transition into adulthood and the broader world. We prepare our graduates to be problem solvers, critical thinkers, and lifelong learners. For recruiters in the audience, about one-third of our graduates pursue majors in business disciplines, and we invite you to look to us for your accountants, marketers, analysts, and other business functions. Many other of our students prepare for other careers or for graduate school, pre-med, pre-law, communication, the sciences, teaching, and many others. The majority of our graduates stay within Wisconsin and the upper Midwest, and it is my personal goal to land at least one St. Norbert grad into every C-suite of every major institution in the New North. When I joined St. Norbert 3 years ago, I heard a lot about Norbertine philosophies of stabilitas loci, radical hospitality, and communio. For those of you who need to brush up on your Latin, that translates roughly as building fellowship and to live firmly in a place, putting down deep roots within the community. And I can testify that the college walks the talk. Not only do we provide career development opportunity through our undergraduate and graduate degree programs, including our MBA, but our centers interface with the broader community in a number of ways. The Center for Exceptional Leadership focuses on delivering executive education and professional development to high potential employees. The Center for Business and Economic Analysis provides data analytics services and thought leadership. We use a lot of our undergraduates as actually research fellows in that operation. The Strategic Research Institute delivers market research and opinion polling, and the Cassandra Voss Center provides insight on challenging issues related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We also sponsor a CEO breakfast series to provide a forum for thought leadership and to celebrate the deep pool of talent within our regional institutions. In addition, we're always looking for internship opportunities, live projects, and what I call data autopsies, where we take an old data set and try to mine it for insights, which helps to familiarize our students with the local industries as well as the business they're doing. If you'd like more information on any of these, I would welcome the opportunity to talk with you. But now to the task at hand. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Bola Delano-Oriaran, who is a professor at St. Norbert College and a founder of African Heritage, Inc. Bola is an educator, consultant, and engagement strategist who, for the past 3 decades, has championed several community engagement initiatives centered on changing individual, systemic, and institutional narratives around racism, inequity, diversity, and inclusion. Bola is the Dean of the Division of Social Sciences and Professor of Teacher Education at St. Norbert College. She also leads public outreach for Engage to Impact LLC, a company that provides its clients with practical, tangible tools and best practices to authentically connect with multicultural and diverse groups. Bola has more than 30 years of experience in engaging students from marginalized communities to pursue higher education opportunities. She continues to apply her teaching and scholarship to positioning people of color for academic and professional success and engaging predominantly white communities and school districts in critical conversations on issues of race and social injustice. Finally, Bola is the recipient of numerous awards on diversity issues and community change, including the 2021 Insights Wisconsin of Influence in the New North Region Difference Maker Community Award. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bola Delano to the podium.
Greetings, everyone. Oh, come on, you folks. We got to do better than that. I mean, we're in the great Lambeau Field area. So when I say greetings, everyone, I need response back from you all. So we're going to try this one more time. And when you respond back to me, I want you to respond in a way that you're really, really glad you're here. I mean, look out there. The weather is beautiful. And this is Wisconsin, right? Meaning it could be a snowstorm tomorrow, right? Okay, so let me try this one more time. Greetings, everyone. Oh my gosh, thank you, thank you, thank you. It is really a great pleasure to be with all of you today. You know, close to about a year ago, when Barb Lemieux, the president and CEO of New North, when she saw me and talked to me and said, hey, would you mind being a keynote speaker? I said, sure. And I said, what am I supposed to talk about? And she said, oh, just talk about your journey. And then she said, and you have 20 minutes. I'm like, ooh, talk about my journey in 20 minutes? I've never been able to do that, but I guess, however, today, I'll try to do it. So hopefully I can do that. So thank you, everyone, for spending time with me for the next 20 minutes, and hopefully I don't fail the task. And today you're looking at my screen. Yes, I love beautiful screens. I love colorful colors here. But you're looking at my screen today, and you're looking at that sister out there, and you're like, what is she going to talk about? What's going on? I don't know if any one of you have seen this before. I won't put it on because I didn't want to mess up my hair, okay? However, this is a hat. Yeah, and then, depending on how you put it on, like that. So guess what? I'm going to be talking about hats today. And in talking about hats today, some people also call them caps, C-A-P-S. My goal is to engage you to think in terms of the kind of hats you have and how you use it to act, engage, and to impact our communities. So that's part of what I want to do with you today. But as I talk about hats and engaging and impacting you, it's going to be centered from my own experiences based on my journey, but it's also going to be centered on what I'm very passionate about, being one of the talents out here in Northeast Wisconsin. Diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice, okay? You can do nothing, you can't really have diverse, inclusive practices if you're not being just in what you do. So that's what is going to be centered about today. So as I talk about hats, let's do this. How many of you, and I need you to raise your hands if you know anything about, how many of you have hats? How many of you? Raise your hands. That's right, that's right. And how many of you, I'm trying to figure out my mic here, and it's way in the back, so I'm trying to figure out in terms of doing it well. How many of you have multiple hats? Exactly. So quite a number of us have multiple hats here. So when you think in terms of your multiple hats, pardon me, folks, I'm just going to remove this so I know what I'm doing very well here. Okay. So when you think about your multiple hats, thank you. So think about those. Have you ever thought about how many hats there are out there in the world? It's a bunch of them. So as you think about the multiple hats that you have you even thought about what they look like or even what they're called? I never knew that there was actually well, I knew about the fedora hat, but you got a newsboy hat. I'm thinking, what about a newsgirl hat? Is that one out there? I mean, you got a pork pie hat, you got a beret, you got sun hat. I could go on and on. You got a Hamburg hat. But today I'm going to have you think about hats in a different way. When you think about hats in a different way, I'm asking you to begin to think in terms of it in a symbolic way. In terms of when you go out there, think about the hats you wear and what does it represent. And that's what I want to ask you to do today for me, in terms of the hats you wear. And thank you. That's a better one. Thank you. Okay, good. What? Okay. Excellent. Thank you. That's better. Thank you. Just give me one more minute here, folks. Okay. So when you think about the hats that you wear, or in some places it's called headdresses, they are a unique and powerful lens through which you can view the human experience. So again, on one hand, you're thinking about hats, but take it a step further for me and think in terms of what it symbolizes. Okay? As we talk about hats and what it symbolizes, I want you to think in terms of how hats have the power to shift how you think. It has the power in terms of how you see yourselves, but I'm also going to add in there that in terms of the hats you wear, it has the power for you to connect, it has the power for you to engage, and it has the power for you to impact your communities. So what I'm going to try to do with you today is just share a little bit of my own journey in terms of how I've been able to do that, being one of the talents from the great St. Norbert College. So when we think about different hats here, we think in terms of, I want to take you a little bit back to where I came from. Many years ago, I was born in Nigeria, West Africa. And Nigeria, West Africa is the most populous country in the African continent. So being born in Nigeria, West Africa, my space is slightly different, much more different from my space in Northeast Wisconsin. Waking up every morning, when I turn on the TV, what do I see? I see people that look like me, black like me. That's what I see. Also being in Nigeria, West Africa, when I go into grocery stores, when I go into the banks and I spend money, the currency bill, if you look at it, black like me. Representation here, folks. In addition to spending money, when I went to school, elementary school, middle school, high school, I didn't do my college years in Nigeria. However, my principals, counselors, social workers, ministers of education, black folks just like me. Even when my parents decided to take me to the dentist, to the pediatrician, they were still black like me. So my entire space was really black like me. So when my parents decided to have me move away from Nigeria and move to the United States of America, coming to the United States of America, I had already cultivated a hat. I was wearing a hat that cultivated the urgency for me, wherever space I'm in, to ensure that I engage and I impact initiatives that relate to equity, diversity, inclusion, representation. Because coming from Nigeria, representation was never an issue. And folks, I'm not complaining, okay? But the point is, what I'm trying to get you all to think about is the hats that you wear as you go along your journey. What are you doing with it? That's what I'm here to engage you to think about. So I left Nigeria, West Africa, and I moved to Savannah, Georgia. And if anybody knows anything about Savannah, it is a beautiful place. But I went to an historically black college, or also now university, called Savannah State University in Savannah, Georgia. Savannah State University and HBCU. So hear this, folks. If you're thinking about recruiting talent, if you haven't been to HBCUs, that's my #1 strategy for you. If you're looking for diverse talent, if you're looking for black talents, do me a favor. Go to HBCUs. They're right there. Guess what? I'm here. And don't let anybody kid you that black folks won't go to cold areas. I'm here. That's right, exactly. Yeah. That's always, no, don't let anybody kid you. I'm here. Look at them. They're here. Yeah. So if you're looking for diverse talent, if you're looking for black folks, do me a favor. Take a trip or just go online. It's easy to find. Type in HBCUs. And I bet you want talent in Northeast Wisconsin, you'll find them there. So while I was at Savannah State University, folks, I cultivated another hat, folks. And this hat was actually propelling me to do more for the black community. Because on one hand, remember, I moved from Nigeria, went to Savannah, Georgia. Savannah, Georgia, look around me, majority of everybody out there, black folks. But being in Savannah, Georgia, it gave me more urgency that I needed to do more for black folks. Now, for those of you who don't know, HBCUs, when they were created, they were actually created to give black folks like me, way back in history, access to education. Because then, society thought people like me were not talented enough. So HBCUs actually gave black folks like me the opportunity to contribute to society. And here I am. But while I was at Savannah State University, what I also did, in addition to having that urgency for representation, I also pledged, or I also became a member of an organization. This is another tip for you all. I became a member of an organization, an historically black Greek-lettered organization. It's a sorority. When we talk about historically black Greek-lettered organizations, we have sororities and we have fraternities. Those sororities and fraternities, they're organizations that consist of college-educated black folks. And they are committed to improving the quality of lives of black folks. So another tip, you're looking to recruit? Check out the sororities and fraternities. Now get this, I'm about to tell you about talent and what could happen in Northeast Wisconsin with the sororities and fraternities. If you're a member of a sorority, I need you to get up for me, of the Greek-lettered, black Greek-lettered sorority. Check them out. They're here, right there. There go Robin Davis with United Way, and she's a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. I am. And there go Dr. Sabrina Robbins, and she's a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. And believe it or not, you all, these two women have been in the area over 20 years. So you can recruit black folks and they will stay, again, if you treat them right. So on one hand, recruitment is out there, but the retention is the bigger piece for you. So number one, I said, if you want to recruit, go to HBCUs. Number two, you're trying to recruit, you got the Greek-lettered organizations. And guess what? The other point I shall make is, if you have any of these organizations in your area, not only are you recruiting them, but they become a support system for the people you recruit. And these organizations have been around since the 1900s. So at Savannah State, I joined that organization, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and it's an organization that is centered on meeting the needs of black folks. So that gave me another hat that says, you know what, I still got to do more for black folks in society. Live in Savannah, fast forward, I went to Penn State, got a PhD in education. What Penn State really instilled in me is that foundation and the academic knowledge and the scholarship in terms of doing scholarly work and research about educational inequalities in society. And I got my PhD from Penn State with a degree in multicultural education. Now get this, you all, and I will say this, I know I'm in Lambeau Field. I don't do football, for real. My husband does football, he's right here, okay? I don't even do soccer neither, which some people will call European football. I don't do that neither. I don't do potatoes, I don't do cold weather, and I don't do cheese. I know, and guess where I land? Yeah, Northeast Wisconsin. So I knew my creator at that point had a good sense of humor. And I knew at that point that in my journey, my creator really wanted me to engage and act and impact. So I knew there was a task and a journey for me. Moving to New North in the area, I was what some of you may call trailing spouse, accompanying partner, because my husband was recruited by one of the major paper companies in the area. At that point for us, it was James River. Now it's James River, Coke, Georgia Pacific, right? Yeah, okay. But then, moving into this area with my husband, he was the talent, but guess what? New North gained 2 talents. So the power of accompanying spouses, folks, and I know some of you already do know this in terms of how we got to invest in those folks that trail spouses. So moving into the area in Northeast Wisconsin, to New North, I got a job with St. Norbert College, the great and mighty St. Norbert College. You know, I'm one of the folks out there that I truly, truly believe that I have the best of both worlds, personally and professionally. My scholarship is based on multicultural education, authentic community engagement. That's what I do. I love doing that. I'm passionate about it. But then I go to St. Norbert. And at St. Norbert College, one of our missions and traditions is to respond to the needs of local and global communities. Oh my gosh, I'm getting paid for what I'm passionate about. What an awesome experience. They intersect with each other. But being at St. Norbert College, it has given me the opportunity. St. Norbert College has positioned me in supporting my research to formally do more research in our local communities and respond to our local communities. But living or going to school or going to work at St. Norbert College, I lived in Appleton, Wisconsin. And my husband and I, moving to this area, we started looking around. We surely knew it wasn't Nigeria, right? And I surely knew it wasn't like Savannah State. But then we knew that there was a message for us. And the message was to engage, to act, and to impact. So think about all those hats that we've been wearing, that I've been wearing, in terms of what I needed to do. So what we decided to do with 3 other families, my husband and I, we created an organization, and you see the logo in the middle, on top, called African Heritage Incorporated. In 1998. And you probably say, they've been here that long? You better believe it. We've been here that long. But it's part of the journey for us. It's part of that hats, those multiple hats that I acquired, starting from Nigeria, Savannah, Pennsylvania, now here, and we have stayed. But we decided to form an organization. And African Heritage Incorporated is unapologetically centered on the well-being of Black folks in our community. We don't deter from that. Our organization, our goal, is to enhance the well-being of Black folks in Northeast Wisconsin. And we do a variety of programming to support all of you here. So the multiple hats that I have worn, and I must say, not I, but it's a we now. Those hats provided a background and a foundation for me to develop culturally relevant, authentic, Black-centric programming for black folks in the area. And I will tell you this, if you have any black folks in your company, I guarantee you they have benefited from African Heritage Incorporated. We've been doing this from 1998. But you know, we wouldn't be able to do this without the support of a lot of corporations out here. I mean, I could go on and on, including New North. What are some of the things that I've been able to do with the hats? At African Heritage Inc., I am what we consider the architect of community engaged programs. And it's not a job, folks. It's a volunteer role, but it looks like a full-time job. But it's okay, I'm having a good time doing it. So being the architect of community engaged programs, you all, I'll give you examples of what we've been able to do. In February, in engaging our students, this is what we are doing. We're trying to build talent for all of you in this community. If our students black students have good experiences, guess what? They'll go to college and guess what? They'll come back and stay. If they have good experiences. So in February, we create the African Heritage Emerging Student Leaders Institute. We bring close to about 700 black students from as far as Fond du Lac to Green Bay. Those school districts in one setting. And we also bring national thought leaders to engage our black students in your community. So the setting looks something like this, but it's all black. And those students, they're looking on the stage and they're looking at the speakers. Oh my God, that's a scientist. Oh my gosh, that's an innovator. Oh my God, she is an entrepreneur. And they're looking at, and they're like, black like me. They live with a sense of pride. And it's right here in New North. And African Heritage would not have been able to do that without, again, the support of quite a number of you. I want to put that out there, you in terms of organizations. So that's one program we've done to engage folks. When I put on my hat in engaging black students, I'm putting on my hat as a scholar, as a representative of St. Norbert College, as a representative of New North. But what I am doing is I am using my academic background and research in terms of best practices to engage black students. Not only do we even focus with black students, they're teachers. We train teachers to know how to authentically engage black students. That's one example. Another example, just last year, when folks think about Santa, if you go online and you put Santa Claus, for any one of you that believes in Santa Claus, if you go into online and click Santa Claus and do images, what are you going to see in terms of a picture of Santa? I'm going to be blunt with you. White Santa. It's nowhere. First of all, I don't even know, for those of you that identify with the Bible, I don't even know if there's anything about Santa being in the Bible. But we created Santa, right? But the point is, you have children of color looking at Santa, and it doesn't represent who they are. So based on my research about representation, we started another program last year. And we brought a black Santa Claus to the area. Bob was there volunteering, and we had gifts. We had close to 600 folks. Would you believe we had folks from as far as Milwaukee joining us? And they said, we just wanted to make sure that our baby's first Christmas, first experience with Santa was a black one. When folks like that have experiences like that about representation, they stay. And you need talent to stay. You can recruit, you can invest as much money as you want in recruiting talent, but if you don't invest in them, in retaining them, it's not going to work. That's another example of what we've done to engage. Another example, how am I doing on time? Okay, another example. Two things I'm going to bring up. Juneteenth, emancipation of black folks. Did you all realize that when black folks got free, they actually didn't know they were free until 2 years later? They didn't know that. That is what Juneteenth is all about. So Juneteenth is celebrated June 19, but African Heritage has been doing it, what, 12 years? We've been doing it 12 years. So this Sunday in Appleton, if you want to see a celebration, commemoration of freedom, come to Appleton. We now do that on behalf of the city of Appleton, but guess what? It's done by African Heritage Incorporated. And I will say Juneteenth is also co-sponsored by a lot of our corporations that are here. But the hat of knowing the need for representation, knowing the need for diversity, knowing the need to have a just society pushed us further to be able to do Juneteenth. And we've been doing it now for like 12 years. One more program I'm going to bring up. My specialty is in education. I am so passionate about ensuring that children of color, children that come from working backgrounds, also known as low income, they need to have access to quality public education. If you're low income, you don't have access to quality. And I say quality. You may have access to public education, but you don't have access to quality public education. So African Heritage, with, again, the support of a lot of organizations out there, we have launched what we are calling Academy of Black Excellence. And I'm standing right here, being grateful to the Green Bay Packers, because the Green Bay Packers actually have helped to support our digital drive for the Academy of Black Excellence, meaning that every child that is a participant of the Academy of Black Excellence will get free devices. Thanks to the Green Bay Packers. Shout out to you, Green Bay Packers, okay? Thank you. But what the Academy of Black Excellence is doing is, it's a program for black children from grades 2 to 8. We're going to do virtual tutoring free, wraparound services free, care packages free. That's what we're going to be doing. Why am I standing in front of you today? I'm basically standing in front of you and I'm asking you to, if nothing else, with the hats that you wear, we want you to engage, act, and impact. My time is up. I thank you all for engaging with me. And do me a favor, engage, act, impact with whatever hat you have on. And I know you have it. You just got to do it. So thank you all. I am Dr. Bola Delano, Dean of Social Sciences at St. Norbert College. Thank you so much. Laura Jones is one of the only employee that we have. And she's actually, thanks to Microsoft, Microsoft has invested in African Heritage, and we do have an upskilling program. So that's the only employee we have, but she is working for upskilling, okay? And shout out to my husband. He's a co-founder and one on the board.
Can you
so
please
we won't
join
have him
us?
come up. Okay?
Can you please join us?
Oh, she's spoken. Okay, so the reason we're actually here today is we really want to give an award. Okay. Microsoft, under the leadership of change agent, leader, advocate, disruptor, Michelle Schuler.
As Michelle takes the stage, we want to acknowledge the hats that she represents when she interacts with African heritage. So the connecting, engaging, and impacting communities. She understands the urgency and earnestly of the importance of now. Now is the time to support and empower diverse groups to formally connect, engage, and collaborate with leaders and influencers committed to driving change and positioning New North as the best place for top talent at all levels, a great place to live and to raise families. We are presenting Michelle Schuler with the Partnership and Collaborator Award as she helps us to build talent, strengthen the Black entrepreneur ecosystem, and support digital upscaling initiatives in the region. Michelle Schuler.
You know, I will go off script then now for a second. I just want to say thank you to everyone in this room. Microsoft has been investing in this community for 5 years. And I know that we've been here before that, but this community is so engaging. And when we talk about support for, like, how do we train more people? I mean, that's on the top of everybody's mind right now. How do we look at increasing the digital skills? How do we support economic development through investments like TitletownTech? I want to say thank you to Dr. Delano and the whole African Heritage Inc. team, because honestly, 2 years ago when COVID hit and Microsoft was strong on how do we make sure that everybody is included, I was looking for a nonprofit that I could really wrap my arms around that and understand. And African Heritage Inc. was that nonprofit. So I want to thank you for everything that you do in this community, and I also want to thank the entire room for being here and everything that you do to invest in New North as a nonprofit in this community. So thank you. I'm going to have you advance the slide a little bit. So one thing that I do want to mention out of this script, there has been a lot of efforts. Generator Upskilling was up here on stage last year talking about skilling talent and diving deeper into that unemployed and underemployed talent that's here in the region. And we're doing great strides there. But really, I want to say thank you to Barrier Workforce Development Board and the efforts 2 days ago, where they gave $1.6 million to support digital equity here in this community. So I want to just say thank you to the Workforce Development Board. Their grant not only went to the New North and African Heritage Inc., but to many other nonprofits here in this region. So now let's see some of the best practices across our region through the talent and education video.
I'm Greg Vandenberg. I'm representing U.S. Venture, and on the drive up here, I was really reflecting on how New North has really been such an important collaborative for this entire region, and U.S. Venture has greatly benefited from that, whether that's talent retention, talent recruitment, just the economic environment for us to be able to expand. You know, on the drive up here, I saw our new warehouse going up on Highway 41 and the U.S. Venture Center just down the road, along with Breakthrough headquarters. And I'm just really proud to be part of a thriving organization, and that so much of that happens because of the collaborative environment that we have here in northeastern Wisconsin, which New North is a leader of. And when I think of collaboration, the other thing that we are often known for, because the name is on the event, is the U.S. Venture Open. But even though our name is on the event, it is a collaboration of this community, and it is absolutely unbelievable. When we have people from other organizations come in from outside the region, they're just blown away on how so many funders and partners like yourselves really just lay aside egos or lay aside any kind of division so that everybody can really come together to try to end poverty in northeastern Wisconsin. And it's been really difficult the last couple of years. We haven't been able to have an in-person event due to the pandemic, and yet because of all of you in this room and our partners throughout the region, we were still able to raise more than $4 million the last 2 years. So please give yourself a hand for continuing to be so generous through really difficult time. The other thing that happened during the pandemic is because of people obviously not being able to go to events like this, a lot of our nonprofits suffered. A lot of their revenue dropped because they weren't able to have fundraising events. And we also saw the services needed to be given by those nonprofits go up. Our pantries were overloaded like they've never been before. Mental health services were so much in need. Things like case management, which you usually did face-to-face, we had to try and find technology solutions and equip nonprofits in that space. And again, because of the collaboration and generosity of all of you, together as a community, from the funds raised at the U.S. Venture Open, we were able to give more than $9 million back to this region over this last year. And Thank you. And thank all of you. And we cannot wait to get back together and celebrate Wednesday, August 10th. For those of you who are our partners, we so appreciate it. We appreciate the trust. It's a big deal from a stewardship standpoint and an integrity standpoint that those dollars are spent as well and impactfully as they can be. But we'd love to have you join us if you haven't been to the event. Again, Wednesday, August 10th. And we're also changing our strategy a little bit based on what, sort of taking a playbook from the playbook of New North. We've done incredible local grant making, and New North does that. When you saw the video at the beginning of the day with all of the local impact of new businesses and things like that, we are going to continue to build on that local investment from a grant making standpoint. But what New North has also done is create this incredible sort of connective tissue for the region. And so how can we do that in the social sector? How can we do that with nonprofits? How can we partner with all of you and all the nonprofits? We have a lot of pride in each of our communities, but I think what New North has shown us is there's great power also in collaborating across those communities. So we're excited as we move into that new venture also. But why I'm up here today is I get the privilege of introducing our teamwork keynote speaker. And he's no stranger to U.S. Venture. We've leveraged his expertise in our own organizational development. Steve Jones is a leadership coach, consultant, and best-selling author who has helped transform influential leaders and successful cultures. Culture either happens by design or default. Steve challenges individuals to intentionally create and grow a winning culture by developing leaders within an organization. Steve Jones recently stepped down after 11 seasons as head football coach for Kimberly High School to pursue leadership training. During this time, the Papermakers have compiled a 129-9 record. Unbelievable. It also included a Wisconsin state record 70 wins in a row. In his 11 years, Kimberly's won 9 conference championships, 5 consecutive state championships, along with 1 state runner-up finish. Steve's been named the Conference Coach of the Year 7 times, and he was also named the 2016 and 17 Associated Press Coach of the Year. He's also won the WFCA Packers Coach of the Year 3 years in a row. Steve was the national runner-up for the Don Shula NFL Coach of the Year and received numerous awards for his leadership and positive influence. We hope you enjoy his book, Twin Thieves. It is now my pleasure to bring up on stage Steve Jones, our region's award-winning coach and leadership expert, our home team advantage.
Thank you so much. Excited and grateful to be here. When she said 20 minutes, it made me panic a little bit too. But I'm excited because usually, 60 to 90 minutes is what we really dive in. But it really forced me. It was a great opportunity to really dive into what I believe makes great teams, and that's what I'm excited to hopefully share with you, is to give you some tools for your toolbox to continue to grow your teams, whether it's at work or at home. And if nothing else, maybe giving you reminders that you already have those tools. So today.